Welcome to the Sales SOS podcast, where we answer your sales distress calls. I'm Liz Hyman, and each week I'm joined by your crew of seasoned sales experts who have navigated these waters and come out victorious. So if you're ready to turn your sales distress into sales success, you're in the right place. Let's dive into today's topic. Welcome to the Sales SOS podcast. I'm Liz Hyman, your host, and I am here with your Sales SOS podcast crew. Today we have Renee Bigelow, Mike Smith, and Daryl Prowl, and we are here today talking about AI. And we expect Chris Bowen to join us in a little bit, but we're going to do 4 episodes in a row talking about AI because we did this about a year and a half ago as our first podcast. And wow, our understanding of AI has changed so dramatically in a year and a half that I can't believe it. Like, I was listening to that going, wow, I know a lot more than I knew now. And there's so much, I don't even have a clue. So we're going to dive in and we're going to start at the beginning, which is how do sales reps use AI? How are they using it? How could they use it better? What are some of the tools that are out there for them to use? Where do they use it in the process? Because, Renee, you said something when we were just chatting before this, which is we kind of thought AI was going to take over the top of the funnel. And what we're learning is that there are all kinds of uses for AI all the way along the sales process. And so I don't know if you want to jump in or if somebody else wants to start, but wow. Let me start really general. How are salespeople able to use AI to make them better at what they do?
Well, I think I'll just kick us off by saying I think in the market, so a year and a half ago, a lot of people in a lot of roles, including sales, didn't feel that AI was reliable enough to do much other than help them word things or phrase things, right? But it wasn't dependable enough or reliable enough. And in that span of time, AI has gotten much smarter, and there are much more connectors and product features and tools that you can use with AI versus just chat, right? So I think the ability has changed greatly, but I think there are 2 worlds out there for AI and sales, of people who are kind of on the frontier and see those new abilities and are doing a lot of things. A lot of that's company culture. Some of it is individual innovation, right? Like managing their own book of business in a different way and everything, right? And then there's the class of people who still think it's kind of clunky like it used to be a year and a half ago, so they haven't picked it back up and aren't really using those tools. So I think we have a kind of a dual class citizenship happening with AI use in sales. Mike, do you think similarly?
I think it's I think there are people who will constantly move through that piece of like fear mongering around what things are going to eliminate, what things are going to no longer be there, and how something will work or how something won't work. And unfortunately, a number of the people who do it aren't using the tools. So like I don't like when they share those things, their experience might be a little bit different than something else. It might be that they had a poor experience with a chatbot, as an example, or they went in and they did a prompt in ChatGPT and the result was different than what their perspective was. Shocking. People have a different perspective, and so do machines. And so I think there's I'd probably put people into one of those 3 categories that you had said: the ones who are using it and starting to adopt it, the ones who are skeptical and not sure about where things are going to go, and the ones who haven't touched it and are still sharing their perspective.
And I would even add to what you just said that the ones who are kind of naysaying often don't know the thing that they need to do to get better results. So they think like that, just asking a question should give everything. And there's some art, right? There's some art and science to getting good results out of it.
Kind of like dealing with people, right? Like you look at the
like doing any job.
Yeah,
do it halfway, you're going to get some halfway results.
Yeah.
Well, I think before we jump a little further to how sales reps can use AI, I think an important question has come up, and this is this whole thing about prompting. I remember when AI first came out and everybody was talking about, we're going to need prompting engineers, right? Who know how to prompt and can help us make the right prompts. But we're learning a lot about prompting. And because Brent's not here and she can't say it herself, she just wrote a book on a format for prompting that she calls Crispy. I don't know if she made that up or if it existed, but she's written a whole book helping people understand how do you prompt to get AI to guide you through what you need to get done. So just putting any prompt in is not going to necessarily get you the result that you need. And you often in the process have to change the prompt or rethink the prompt or be more specific or clarify or change the way you ask the question. So as if this is, I keep thinking this is just like we always said, garbage in, garbage out. If the prompt is garbage, what you get out will be garbage. And some AI tools are learning how to be more like us. I'm teaching my GPT and my Ask SSL, how do I see? What things don't I say? What things do I say? So as we begin to get better at prompting, we will get better at getting the results we want. And Mike, did you want to say something?
I think that the thing that's kind of interesting about it, and I was on a call with someone yesterday who worked for an AI company a couple of years ago, and was deeply involved in a number of the things around recommending how prompts should be done. And when I put my first prompt in while he was watching, he's like, you really need to go and work on your prompting because that prompt, whatever. And the result was absolutely amazing. And he goes, maybe you don't need to work on your prompting. Like his prompts are essays and my prompt was 10 words. And so a lot of it is having a view on what you'd like to see. Like, do you have a view on what the result should be at some point in time? And if you don't have a view on what the result should be, then it's going to be really hard to make the thing align with what it is. If you do have a view, then you can put the prompt in as simple wording as possible, see the result and say, that was kind of close. Do it again, try differently. And that's the beauty of it. And what I like about it, and what I like about how the evolution keeps happening, is you can take an iterative approach to building on things and once you start to come up with something that's working, then you can standardize it, which is some of the stuff that we're doing with the various GPTs that we have that operate parts of the business.
So what I find interesting is how quickly this conversation, which opened up with how are sales reps using AI, instantly went into this is how you should do prompting. You're not doing prompting right, not doing wrong. And that makes an assumption that the rep listening to this understands what we're even talking about, which goes back to Mike's point. Three kind of different sales reps. And one of those groups is they're really not using it at all. Right. So right away, if you're not using it, this conversation is probably, you're tuning out. But I also love Renee's point about she made many, but the one that really resonated with me was like a year and a half ago versus now. A year and a half ago, very few people were talking about prompting, the prompting skills, right? So I did a little experiment while these fine people were sitting here talking. And I wrote down, I have my little cheat sheet, I wrote down how I believe sales reps are using it. All right. So I said, in no particular order, and some of this is definitely a year and a half ago. Social media engagement, writing the posts, responding to the comments, and that was bad. People sift that out really, really quickly. That was like early days AI. It was abused because the problem is we all tend to there's so many people that look for shortcuts and they abuse the hell out of it and everybody else can see it. So AI's gone through that for sure. But then as you get more sophisticated into it, I wrote down researching prospects. What are their pain points? Who are the personas? What are the discovery questions I should be asking? What are the objection handling responses I should be having? In other words, self-improvement. How can I convert higher using AI to understand this? Then I looked at the efficiency aspects, some of which is us really old. Gong's been doing this, Outreach has been doing this forever, whether it be like note taking, etc. But to me, daily planning. But I loved how the ones who are sophisticated are the ones, and this kind of where I'll build off your point, Mike, about prompting, writing an essay versus writing 12 words. Me, I prefer to do the one in the middle, which is let me start with 12 words and then let me iterate and refine and refine and refine and refine until I get what I want to, because then that allows me to think my way through it. So that was how I started. And then I went over here to my wonderful Gemini Pro, of which I pay for the advanced subscription, where the hell it is. And I asked the same question. And it was really interesting, and it came right away. The things I said: prospecting and lead generation, data enrichment, lead scoring, outreach and communication, personalized content creation, email optimization. You see, again, these are often built into it. Conversational intelligence, coaching, sales process and forecasting. We haven't talked about that at all. Customer retention, upselling. Wonderful. So I did it myself. I used AI and then I iterated. So there we go. That's how I think I'm probably a typical sales rep, the way I just went about that.
Yeah. That was great. What I want to do right now, before we jump further down that path of using prompts and getting it right, which I think we can talk about in the 4th episode a little bit. Let's really think about the sales rep. Okay, I'm sales rep A. I'm sales rep Liz, and I have to now do my job. And I'm one of those unfortunate sales reps who has every responsibility from prospecting to closing and not enough time to do it all. And I'm not very efficient. And what do I do? So let's sort of talk through how do I use this? Can we start at the top of the funnel and maybe talk about some of the things I could do at the top and then move through?
You go to Hoover's.
Okay, that's Hoover's is one. Yeah, go ahead. What do you do at Hoover's?
I don't
That's
think
the end of his answer.
anybody
That was a
listening
small
to
word.
what Hoover's is or Jigsaw, like
Jigsaw.
Well, Hoover's actually still exists. It just was purchased, right?
Hey, no kidding. I've not used Hoover's in forever.
No,
Didn't even know that
it's
it
all
still
of the Hoover's data was put into, I don't know which of the other
EMB.
databases. But okay,
Right.
so what Mike is saying, we used to open a book at I literally used to open a book called Standard & Poor's, right? But we don't need to do that anymore. There's no opening books. You don't have to just go to a dead list, which is what I think of a list that's not being enriched, right?
Right.
So a list that is just a static or dead, here's a list. I pulled all this information. I'm going to use it for the next 6 months. Well, in a month and a half, that list is starting to rot. Literally, it's no longer good. So we now have some tools that make list building a whole lot easier. And they're using intent data, which is really cool. I don't know if one of you guys wants to talk about what is intent data? How are we using this to build better lists? Oh, you're going to make me do it?
Well, I figured Renee would talk about intent.
Yeah, we're all waiting for
Google
Renee.
marketing.
Some of the intent data providers,
Don't hold any punches. Like go right out there and give a real scoop.
What it is, and now let's talk about
a
how
lot
it
of
works.
intent data requires clean data attribution. And what has happened over the past couple of years, it started before AI, but it is now far murkier, is what we thought was this holy grail of being able to see every breadcrumb that every person did in the right order and everything else is a myth, right? Most of the activity doesn't show up that way. So if you're relying on a lot of vendors that do intent data that are basing their intent off of attribution of actions, which is like a digital breadcrumb, there are a lot of gaps in it. So the broad umbrella of intent data versus maybe your own first party information, right? So if you know someone's hit your pricing page, if you know someone's done some of those things, like those are first party intent data things versus a enrichment company for intent. So again, that one might be a little bit loaded for me because I think we have a lot of attribution crack going on and a lot of saying that things are visible when they're not really visible, when there are big gaps in data.
Well, 6 Sense used to do. I mean, 6 Sense was pulling intent data and charging a phenomenal amount of money, right, to do it. And now there are companies that maybe it's not perfect, but they are doing this and they are looking for clues that people who meet your ideal customer profile might be taking actions or asking questions that may or may not indicate that they're going to buy from you. So let's just start with, Renee, let's start with what it is. What is intent data? How are people using it to build lists? Because we now know there's problems with it, right? You just laid that out for us. Here's the thing to worry about. But what is this, and why are people using it? And is it working?
And there are some very good ones too, right? Like that tie together databases, like actual databases, like building permits, business permits, things that are triggers that would put someone in the market that that if you are in home services and home sales would be a great one, right? And you can get a list of a true database, right? Of people who have taken actions that put them in your market, right? They're triggers for actions that they take prior to when they need your services. I think those intent services are wonderful, and the promise of big data is actually starting to happen. Like we've been saying for over a decade, oh, big data, big data, big data, like you can do this. And it was actually quite clunky and hard, and we needed like solutions engineers to put all this together and get it into a CRM. But now there are services that tie together a lot of those databases, so you can filter down and find a much better, quicker version of intent type behavior based on triggers in other databases, right? In something like a Hoover's where you really could filter it down. I'm not saying Hoover's, but kind of that same concept, right?
I think Hoover should sponsor us just for saying that.
They'll be our most profitable sponsor yet.
And P.S. Mike, it hasn't been that long since I've used a Hoover's.
Wow, that's awesome. I remember, Hoover's and Siebel and these older systems, act like stuff like that, where you come up and
Goldmine.
Say that again.
Goldmine.
Perfect. So we, Daryl has more gray hair than any of us. I am working on catching up. We've got some experience here. So as you look at this, there are some things that sales reps need to do in order to do their job well. And let's put sales reps under the umbrella of anybody who interacts directly with the customer and is carrying a quota. Okay. I understand that there are certain roles that may or may not carry a quota. Like some customer success folks will carry a quota and some won't carry a quota. In this instance, let's say anybody who is interacting directly with the customer and has a quota that they need to attain. Well, one thing you want to know is, who do you actually talk with? Like, who are those customers? And this list building piece, using a tool, one of the ones that we're testing is a tool called Exa, which is absolutely insane. It is amazing what we're able to do in testing small lists to determine, do we want to go deeper into that list or do we want to stop? So that we're not trying to get in front of 1,000 people. Let's start with 10 or 25. And that's the number we're starting with, 25. So we want to get a list of people that we want to be able to talk with. Then the other thing we want to do is we want to have some reason to reach out to them. And if you're connected with marketing and you have information coming through and you're seeing some of the background data on the people that you want to reach out to, then you can reach out in context. That's one way to do it. Other things you can do is look at all the signals that are potentially out there. Way back in the day, we used to have to read annual reports or sit on the investor calls. Now you don't. You can take that stuff, throw it into Notebook LLM, the recording of the call, and get a brief summary and listen to the podcast version of people talking about what just happened there. So now, while you're driving from where you are to where you need to get to, or you're on an airplane or whatever you're doing, you're able to listen to this stuff in context and be very targeted around the specific companies. Those are just a couple of examples of what you can do with data, where back in the day, we actually had to read a lot of stuff and then we had to call a lot of people. And now you can get so much more. So if you are going into a call unprepared, you're doing your job wrong.
Okay, so let's back up a second. So we started
Don't
with
you laugh, Daryl.
I'm sorry.
research.
If you're going to a call, you're doing unprepared, you're doing your job wrong. I mean, that's always been the case. And the issue is too many reps were always unprepared. But that's why I was giggling. It was like, oh my gosh.
I think
You're old too.
it's so much easier now, right?
Okay, hang on, because we keep getting ahead of ourselves. I'm a sales rep. I know nothing about AI, right? So we started with top of the funnel. Let me help you figure out which companies you're going after, which companies have given some intent, right? This is list building, right? So we go from list building to research. So we're hoping when we buy from a company that's creating lists that have intent, meaning they believe that this customer using the internet has expressed need or interest in our product, right? So this is intent data. This is list with intent. Now, I don't know how good they are because I haven't used one yet, but I know everybody's really excited about this idea of intent in list building. Okay, so now I've built a list. I built a list of people I want to go after, whether I used intent or not. And hopefully I've got a list that has from a company that is updating the information constantly. And I have access to that constantly updating information. So now I have a list. Now I'm going to try to get some meetings. I'm going to try to send some emails. I'm going to have my first conversation. So now we're talking about research. And what Mike was talking about before is you have no idea, if you are new to the sales world, how hard it has been to gather information and how many hours it takes if you're digging through the internet cold and trying to pull up reports and pull up any of your reports and all this stuff. So now you have many ways to prepare, as Mike said, for a meeting, because now it's at your fingertips. And that 5 minutes that it takes to pull up sub-pertinent information is better than nothing. And I'm going to tell you how you look and feel when you don't do this research. And I'm going to have Mike and Renee tell us, and Daryl talk to us about how to do it. I got on a call the other day with somebody who sent me something on LinkedIn that I thought, I'm going to just see what they said, because they said they were going to do an assessment of my online presence. So I thought, well, that would be really interesting to hear. What is my online presence? I got on the phone, and the first question the guy asked me is, what do you do? He was supposed to have done an assessment of my online data or my online presence. He had not even looked up my name. That's what it looks like when you go into a meeting. So I played along for a little while, and then he started looking at my data, and eventually he got to the point where he said, Liz, I can't help you with your online presence. You're already doing all the things we tell people to do. I'm like, so you and I just wasted 20 minutes for you to determine that I'm not even your ideal customer. Do you make sure that when you get on the call with a prospect, you don't start off looking like an idiot? I mean, we can still do the basic things we've all understood. Check them out on LinkedIn. Look at their website. But there's more, better, and easier ways to do this. So, I don't know, Daryl, you look like you might want to jump in there.
No, I'm laughing because I see Mike laughing, because what you're asking is actually not an AI. AI is not going to fix a rep's inability to do basic sales 101 of preparation and research. That's the issue.
Right.
And that's why I was laughing at Mike before, right? But if the rep didn't have time to do that, then AI, very quick AI, a handful of prompts before getting on the call might save their ass. But that's just me. Mike, go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm giggling.
Just like acumen and initiative. Like, imagine if you have both of those. Maybe that's the AI we all need, is acumen and initiative. A little bit of business
I
acumen.
picked that up, the A and the I. Well done,
I spelled it out only for you, Daryl.
That was good.
That was why I did that. You have no excuse for not at least asking some questions up front, and you might miss, and you might not find out information. But yeah, that's a crap situation, Liz. But it's not uncommon.
So let's talk about how this happened. So one thing, I think this poor guy, I actually don't think it was his fault. I think the way his company had it set up was they just plugged him into the next call. Okay, you sit there and wait, and when you finish one call, we're going to plug the next one in. That's what I think happened. And they didn't build into the process any time for him to do it. I'm going to give him that benefit of a doubt. But, okay, so if we are going to get on a call with a customer, there is no excuse for not knowing them. And there was no excuse before for not trying to know about them. I mean, we've had websites for over, I don't know, how many years have we had websites? 30 years? At the very least, you could have done that. But now you can get on to AI and you can ask for help. So when I start with a client who is doing a key account plan, for example, I'm amazed at how much they don't know. So I immediately jump on just to ChatGPT really simply and say, what are the key initiatives this company has put in place for this year? Now, if you're going for a really small company, they're not going to be, the information probably isn't going to be there. But if it's any size company at all, there's going to be information there. What are their vision, values, missions? What are the objectives they have for this year? And if that's up there, great. So what's going on in this industry right now? This client that I'm calling for is in this industry. What kinds of problems are they having in this industry? What kinds of things are they trying to do in this industry? What are the big problems that they're facing? Like you can ask AI. And if you don't know what to ask AI, you can say, hey, ChatGPT, could you tell me what I should be asking or what I should know before I walk into this client? And it will actually help you figure out what you should be asking. So that's just a really simple starting place. If you have a CRM that has AI built into it, some of that may just come up as you're pulling up the client. Renee, you look like you were thinking about jumping in.
We call it research. And absolutely, I think we've moved into a realm where we should be thinking of anything that we do that's DIY research, how AI can help us, right? Do with this AI assisted research, because it's sometimes a savings on time. Sometimes, right? If you have a really good system and you're a great AE and you know how to get into things and look, you know how to scan corporate reports and listen to earnings calls and you already have sources that break down earnings calls, so you don't listen to the whole thing. Like some people have really good processes. They may not feel the time savings on using AI assisted research, but you will get a partner to help you look for patterns and listen for things. So as much context as you can build around a client, you can get things from their website, as you said, you can pull down corporate annual reports. There are so many things, whatever you can feed. If you can have it do a research report and look for any articles they've been mentioned in or whatever, right? And add all of those files into something like a project in AI so that it has a lot of context. And if you are able to record your discovery call with them, right? When you put all that in together, you are going to have so much help with like an assistant on your shoulder kind of thing, where you process your thoughts about the meeting and it says, oh, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? I looked at their corporate report and in your proposal, I don't see you mentioning anything about this initiative, right? Like it really.
Okay. I'm gonna stop you, Renee, for a minute, because now you're further down the process. So now we're a little further down the sales process. And what we're talking about now is, how am I using AI to better engage with this person? I've already researched them and had our first meeting. Now you're talking about using AI to take meeting notes and help me plan my next meeting. And so let's walk.
What I'm suggesting is every step along the way. So you were talking about the top of the funnel with like enrichment or triggers or intense data, whatever you want to call those, right? You've pulled those in and you've learned those about a client. Then you've gone out and done some research with whatever materials are to go into a call. Then when you add, whenever you get into, even if you just add the email chain back and forth, right, of whatever they say when you reach out to, you're continually adding context into it. And that's how it gets much better at helping.
So what I would say, I'm laughing because I'm listening to both Mike and Renee here, and Mike has made a comment because he's really old. He said, we used to have to read paper stuff, right? I cannot tell you how many times we would pour through a 10K or a 10Q or an 8K, if you're a public company, to try to find clues on how to engage with this. You said in your 10K that you have this initiative for the next year and there's risk and these are your competitors and blah, blah, blah. We're now, to Renee's point, before I hop in that call, I can have AI simply say, look at the last couple, tell me what the issues are, tell me who the competitors are, tell me how they compare and contrast, and what are their likely, investments they're going to make, and how can my company help? Now, give me a series of, discovery questions that I can use to, find this out better. That's so quick and easy and done, as opposed to getting on a call saying, where the rep says, so what do you do? Sidebar, Liz, you should have said, seriously? Tell you what, let's reschedule this call. And when you know what I do, we'll have it again. But that's an aside.
Right. I was just curious.
I know. I get
more
it.
than anything. So I did that with another guy who told me that I was missing it. And I said,
What were you missing out on?
Yeah,
he wasn't going to do the research and call me back.
that's right.
Yeah.
So it was my loss to that for me. That's what he said. When he had
That's when you say, you need to look up my last name and get back to me when you get a clue.
I was just going to say this idea of context that we've all said different ways to build context around prospects or customers, depending on which one it is, right? But the idea that's different, the way that AEs, that sales reps can really use this, I think, is to consider that you are building your database about that customer, right? So it's not one and done. I think that's one of the biggest differences. So that, as Daryl said, you have those two reports from one quarter to the next, or last year's year over year, whatever. And now you see what's different, right? And it can help you find those patterns that are a little bit harder when you've got, 50 accounts on your list or 10 people you're trying to call today or whatever. So continually adding context in, I think if there was one thing I would say to a sales rep, how can they start using AI? It's find pieces of information that you can feed to AI to give it context and continually build that over time, right? So that you're connecting in more and more sources of information to help you.
Okay, but now I'm going to play devil's advocate again here, which is I have all this information. I now have 30 pages of ChatGPT sharing information with me and processing everything I said and redoing it. And what do I do with this?
Send a proposal.
You ask the AI to help you
And
win
ask AI to rate it. Yes.
You ask the AI to help you get down to the top next action.
Right. So, and this is the key. This is not just about collecting data or whatever information. There's more to it than that. Use AI to help you process it. Okay, you told me all this stuff. What's relevant to what we're trying to do? If you've had a meeting, you can put that transcript. If you use Otter or, I don't know, there's a million of them that are out there now.
Fathom, bunch. Yeah.
What?
Fathom, Copilot.
Copilot, Read AI. There's a million of them.
Even ChatGPT itself will do transcripts now.
So those, when they do the transcript, will give you some highlights and key actions, but you can take a transcript and put it in to whichever tool you choose to use and say, hey, so what were the most important insights that came out of this? Which ones can I take action on? Will you help me come up with a plan that addresses the things that were most important? And actually, somebody did this the other day with me really, really well. So we had a conversation. He used Fathom, he pulled the information out and fed it back to me in a way that demonstrated that not only did he pulled out what AI said, and then he wrote a paragraph about how he would address it. So I wouldn't just pull everything out of AI and send that off and think you finished your job. You still have to interact in a human way. But AI can help you. Mike, I know you're ready to say something. Go ahead.
Thanks for always reading my nonverbal communication. This is the one thing AI will not replace, is Liz's ability to be able to say like, oh, Mike has got some vein popping out of his head and he's just ready to share something. There's there's a couple of things to be careful with. Number one, make sure your customers know that you're recording them.
Absolutely.
Okay. So like there's some security and some ethical things to be aware of.
Ask.
Be careful.
Be sure, but ask.
Yeah. Be careful that about the information you share and what you're using or allowing a system to use for training data. There's risk that comes up with this. So you'll have some risk assessments that'll happen inside your organization. If you anonymize things and you test some things, what you'll really realize is humans have human issues. And many times those humans have the same human across multiple organizations. There's just going to be some more specific things that'll come up inside individual companies. one of the questions, and as a sales professional out there, one of the things you should be really good at is asking questions. You should be curious. Let's ask simple questions and see what we can do to get information back as we go through the process. So another question you can ask after you go through all of this stuff that we've been talking about so far is this question. What should I have asked that I didn't ask? Or what might I have missed that you're surprised I missed? And see what the tool itself goes through and is able to pull out. So those are just a couple of other things. One, be careful about the security risks. Make sure you're have some of that process stuff in place, and go back to your sales skills and ask questions. Your sales pro, your pro.
Brilliant. In other words, it's always AI. It's like I always tell people, AI is just a tool. We've had tool after tool after tool brought in over the years, but it never changes the core elements of your job. Like you just said, Mike, still be a sales rep, right? You're using it to help you, but you still have to do the work. You still have to follow the process. You still have to, use your, develop relationship skills. None of that's changed. AI doesn't do that. It just gives you more time. However, your competition is definitely using it. And if you're not, they're going to be way faster and way more insightful with way better questions, drilling down to the issues way faster and conveying way more trust than you are, just so you know. So it's a tool.
Okay. I think, I think the question here is there anything left that we have not addressed, because we've spent quite a long time on this, that we have not addressed that a salesperson should be thinking about how they can use AI to improve their selling skills? Hang on.
I would say one more thing that's pretty simple. If there's anything that takes you an inordinate amount of time or you feel is like not your strength, then use AI in the appropriate way. Like when I say in the appropriate way, use AI to help coach you and be a partner to help you process your thoughts and maybe move along to do better. Don't automatically spit out results from AI just because you think it's your weakest area, but it really is helpful in wherever you feel. We said research, but some people are power researchers because they've got kind of a process they've already worked out, but maybe they aren't the best at communicating via email, right? Or maybe it's the opposite. Somebody's excellent in their communication skills, but not a deep researcher. Really make sure you're thinking of the place that either you really don't like to spend time in your job or the place where you could, it's not your strength, and find ways to use AI to help you with that.
So one of the questions we haven't talked about when it comes to a sales rep, how do I use AI? And maybe this isn't for this episode. If so, just tell me, is if you're a sales rep, my boss could be one of two extremes. One is you need to use AI for everything and you're doing it wrong. Or the other one is they're not using AI at all. They don't have the tools. They don't want to make the investments, but I want to use AI, but they're laggards. So so in either of those scenarios, how does that affect how we use AI? Or does it? Maybe it doesn't.
There's a lot of shadow IT going on right now with AI.
Yeah.
A lot. To Mike's point, that can create risk, right? Like if you're saying you can't use it and you got a sales rep who's savvy and knows that they can do better and make more money because they use AI, they're going to go use AI. It's not going to be in the official way. They're going to share information that may not be on a company account that isn't protected from training on data, right? Like you're creating a lot of risk if you're being a manager who's being a real laggard about this, which might segue us into our next topic, Liz.
I think it does. Thanks everyone for joining us for this episode of the Sales SOS podcast. I'm Liz Hyman here with your crew, Mike Simmons, Renee Bigelow, and Daryl Pro. Have a great day, and hopefully you'll join us in our next episode about AI and how sales leaders can use it. And that's a wrap for this episode of the Sales SOS podcast. A huge thank you to our experts for throwing us a lifeline with their insights. We hope that episode has equipped you to navigate sales leadership with confidence. Never miss an episode. subscribe to your Sales SOS podcast on your favorite platform. If you have questions, comments, or topics you'd like us to explore, join us live on LinkedIn every second Friday, or share your questions on LinkedIn or YouTube. Until next time, keep sailing toward your sales goals.